challenge.
Hi, Sue and Ben. Welcome to Retro Tech. We're going to get started today with Sue. Sue, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi. I am Sue Lowe. I am a developer now on the HoloLens team, but I spent Windows Phone time working on the performance and memory usage and battery life of Windows Phone.
All right, Ben.
Hey, everybody. My name's Ben Rudolph. A lot of you know me as Ben the PC Guy. I am currently the managing director of Microsoft News Labs. We are an R&D team focused on using Microsoft technology to advance the art, science, and business of journalism. But where I got to know a lot of the people who were listening here was when I was running the Smoke by Windows Phone and Windows Phone Challenge advertising and experiential marketing campaigns for Windows Phone. So I was kind of the face of the product for a long time around the world.
That's awesome. That is a very big, it's a big responsibility to be the face of a product. That's awesome. All right. Well, could each of you talk a little bit about kind of the work that you did and share any interesting stories about your time on the project?
Sure. So as I said, my work on Windows Phone was mostly related to what we call fundamentals, the performance, memory, battery life. In the early days of Windows Phone, I spent a lot of time working on battery. So battery life on a phone means we have to keep as little running in the background as possible so that we can turn everything off and not be using your CPU and the network. And so we were getting performance traces of everything that was taking too much time, and turning it off was basically what we were doing. I also spent a good amount of time on the start menu performance, making that run as fast as I could. I also spent a fair bit of time working on memory. We had a pretty small amount of memory on these phones, and we needed to make sure that multiple things could run in the background. So there was a lot of work that went into budgeting all of that. And you ask for interesting stories. One of my biggest memories of early time on Windows Phone was my leader, Saba Maher. Maher Saba. We all just called him Saba. He was like a banker, going after everybody for megabytes and kilobytes. And so he would walk around and take IOUs from people and say, okay, you can have that megabyte now, but by the time we ship, you got to give it back. And things like that. He had, unbeknownst to most people, just to make sure that everything would fit in the memory that we had on those devices. We actually had what we called the sandbag. We allocated some of the memory and took it away from the rest of the system so that we made sure the system would work well with a smaller amount of memory. And if that worked, then when we took away the sandbag on our shipping product, we knew that the product would be great. So I guess some of my early day memories are all about, penny pinching megabytes on the Windows Phone to make it work great.
This campaign called Smoke by Windows Phone and the Windows Phone Challenge. So we're here at CES 2012, Las Vegas, Nevada. We are about to kick off the $100 Smoke by Windows Phone Challenge. So here's the deal. We believe that we built a phone that makes things so much faster and easier, all the stuff that we do every day on our smartphones, that I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is. And we were in a spot, my team was in a spot where we were trying to figure out a way to build a community of advocates to help us go out and build the ecosystem, which is a really difficult thing to do because we were in this deep challenger position, right? iPhone was already largely entrenched. Android was already largely entrenched. And we had to convince people to jump into this thing that was largely unproven. And we had to give them reasons to believe. So for those of you who are not familiar with the campaign, we basically, we did a bunch of user testing out in the field against comparing the things that we knew that people did on their phones, take pictures, share to social media, check the weather, all that kind of stuff. And we compared it against the competition. And we found out that we were actually much better at it. at the regular things that people do on their smartphones, Windows Phone was much, much better. So we decided to put together this campaign. It actually started out as a stunt and became a campaign where we went to CES and we talked to people who had these other phones, and we said, "Oh, you're a parent. I'm a parent. We take pictures of our kids. I bet I can take a picture with my phone faster than you can take a picture with your phone. And I'll tell you what, if you win, I'll give you $100 in cash out of my wallet. If I win, all you have to do is hold up this sign." And it literally said, "My phone got smoked by Windows Phone." He said, "All you have to say is, hey, my name is Ben. I have an iPhone 4S, and it just got smoked by Windows Phone." And it worked. And we crushed the competition. But more than anything, what it did is it empowered people to be the heroes of their own story. And it gave them the ability to win what I called like the backyard barbecue argument, which is you're at your backyard barbecue and your friend pulls out their iPhone, your other friend pulls out their fancy Android phone, and you pull out your Windows Phone, and everybody points and laughs and made fun of you and said, "I can't believe you bought that thing. Why didn't you buy the same thing that we bought?" And you could say, no. I can do the same demos as the guy on TV or the guy that I met in the store. And you could show people why you actually had a bit of insider knowledge and a bit of expertise that they didn't. So I think my favorite story beyond that, aside from personally having the opportunity to like be in a bunch of TV commercials and show up in movie theaters and see this campaign scale around the world, was the ability for that campaign to create like its own like self-perpetuating meme infrastructure and build this incredible community of advocates for Microsoft, most of whom I still talk to today. Like there are people that I talk to on Twitter every single day that like I connected through, the Windows Phone challenge 8 years ago. So like it was a product to me that like the thing that made it so interesting to me beyond the technology was that people gravitated to it and people believed and people still believe. And it's still something that comes up as part of the broader Microsoft community. Like of all the products that we have made and all the products I've been part of over my last 12 years here, it is the one that I feel like drove the most emotional connection with the most number of people. And I think that was, for me, the most exciting part of being part of it.
Another thing kind of similar to what you were talking about, I knew we were doing a great job on our work on battery life when I started walking through airports and noticing that every single power jack was being taken up by people trying to plug in their phones.
Right.
And meanwhile, I was walking around with my phone and it still had like 85% battery. There is no competition to the Windows Phone on battery life. We were the best around for sure, no doubt.
Yeah. And I had a similar moment where one of the challenges that we did that showed up in a bunch of marketing campaigns was the camera button on the side, right? Like you could simply get to your camera and capture the shot that you needed faster. And we did that. And then in the next iOS update, Apple added the swipe to camera feature to compete. And I feel like if, me and a couple other people in a conference room putting together demo scenarios could get Apple to like lurch over and do something else, that's a pretty big deal. And it all comes down to great product design, right? Like our teams designed that in a way that was user-centric, and we did it before anybody else. And that's pretty awesome.
So kind of on a similar topic, what you all are talking about is, I know I've read a lot of blog posts and I've seen a lot of tweets and read a lot about how the Windows Phone was ahead of its time. And I feel like we're kind of getting to there. So what all do you think made the Windows Phone ahead of its time? And what all do you see in products today that you feel like came from the Windows Phone?
Well, in many ways we were behind, but one of the things that we did before anybody else was the live tiles. You can't argue, those live tiles made a huge difference to being able to pick up your phone and just look at it and know if there's anything else you want to do. And the fact that now every other phone's copied and at least put some kind of badge, we were the first ones to do that. And still today, I miss my calendar. Being able to look at my phone and see my calendar quickly, that there's no comparison.
I'm with you, and it drove me crazy when I saw the Apple's latest keynote, and they were basically like, "We invented live tiles." They're like, "Look, we have these little squares on our screen, and they provide real time information, and we think you're going to love it." And like everybody from our team was like banging their head into their desk saying, "Awesome! We kind of designed that in like 2011, and they were great back then, and they'll be great now." But I'm glad that more people will get to experience that kind of feature. The live tiles for me were the number one thing. And when I think about even in our early days when we announced it, when it was Windows Phone 7 series phones, which is not a great product name, but we trimmed it down. When we did that amazing ad, the Season of the Witch ad, with all the people kind of in the Parisian street, like staring at their phone. And like the original promise was, it's time for a phone to save us from our phones. Because even back in 2011, 2012, the team realized that people were getting addicted to their smartphones, right? The appointment mechanics and the motivation mechanics that were built into iOS and Android were getting people addicted. And there had to be a better way to get access to that information without constantly being like this all day. And, you know, some of the things like the always on display and the live tiles just allowed us to make for a better experience. Like I use my phone reflexively and instinctively way more now than I did with Windows Phone. I don't think that's because of necessarily the depth of where things have gone for mobile. It's because the phones are architected to encourage me to check them more frequently. So I deeply, deeply miss my live tiles. And for me, I deeply miss the ability to multi-post to multiple social networks at a single time. I thought that was just, at the time when I was a much heavier Facebook user, I'm not really anymore. I love the ability to like take whatever pithy statement that I thought was funny, but nobody else would probably find funny, and share it to both of my networks in one shot. That was a pretty big deal for me.
I know you kind of already talked about this, Ben, but about what you miss the most. But anything else you can think of? And Sue, what about you? Anything in particular, like a specific feature or something that you miss about the phone? I know you said you miss the calendar, which I'm not really happy with calendars on cell phones anymore. I feel like it doesn't matter what I use, I'm not ever happy with it. Like there's always a syncing issue, or if I send someone an invite, they don't get it all the time, and it's just kind of a mess. So I'm curious if there's anything else you can think of.
Mm-hmm. The calendar for sure, because I used to just use my phone as my reminder for where I'm supposed to be right now. I would not even unlock it, just look at it and say, what conference am I supposed to walk to right now? And then the other feature that I miss, it's less important to me now, but still would be useful, is we used to have a feature called Kid Zone, where you could have essentially a second start menu that was locked so that your kids could go into the Kid Zone and see only the apps that you pinned for them and not get out of Kid Zone, and they couldn't buy anything in the store. So basically you could put them in here and it's locked to kid-friendly content, and they could only play their apps and not get out and accidentally like delete my email or something. So I could hand over my phone while we're driving in the car or something to my 3-year-old and not have them go off in the weeds and get into something wrong.
Yeah, that was a really big deal. And now I have 7 kids. My oldest is almost 12, so I have a bunch of little ones around the house. I wish that my phone still had Kid Zone. At the time, I only had 1, so it wasn't really that big a deal. I could kind of keep an eye on her. Now I have 7, and it's a lot harder. For me, the one feature that I really miss, I'm a photographer in my spare time, and I've got a really nice DSLR, great lenses. I deep in Lightroom and Photoshop. But ultimately, the best camera is the one you have with you. And the thing that I miss the most is the dedicated camera button on all Windows phones. Like I've got a Galaxy Note 10 Plus right now, and it's a very good phone. And if I double click the power button, the camera pops up. But it's still not the same. We had a dedicated camera button in the same spot that a shutter button would be. And if you held that thing down for 1 second, the camera would instantly turn on. And I got better, faster pictures of my kids with like my Lumia 1520 in 2014 than I do now with my Note 10 Plus, because I can simply just get the thing out of my pocket and fire up the camera faster. Like I still feel like that's something that modern smartphones, while the image quality might be better, it's debatable when you get into like the 1520s and Lumia 1020s and things like that. But the camera might be better, but the actual ergonomics and the usability is not where my, Dell Venue Pro was in 2011. And that kind of bums me out. That is something I still wish was built in. I wish that was something that was adopted by other smartphone manufacturers.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, especially if I'm like on a trip or something, and I'm like, I'm just trying to get a shot. Like, for example, when I went to the Portland Rose Garden, I think it was last year. There's a lot of people there when you go and visit, and July is like the peak rose season, so like everyone's there, and you're just like, I'm trying to take all these photos because I've never seen that many roses before, and it's so beautiful. And like, it's like celebrities have specific roses that they help cultivate like with everyone, and it's really cool. They're named after, I think Willie Nelson has a rose, I forget who else, but it's this amazing environment. And like, I'm trying to like navigate around the people and like get my cell phone out at the same time. And like, even though I know there's the swipe to camera thing, I like don't think about that half the time. And so like, I'm like trying to get my phone out and trying to get everything set up, and it's just kind of like frustrating. So I totally understand what you're saying.
I say this as a photographer. Like if I'm doing like there's a difference between pictures and photographs, right? And if I'm taking photographs, like this was a kind of this like mind-blowing moment for me when my littlest one was born. He's 8 months old. All of the photography that I did, all my beautiful black and white newborn photos, I shot on my Note 10 Plus, and I edited them in Lightroom, my Note 10 Plus. And I used the AI-driven bokeh and all that stuff, and it's great. Like, they are phenomenal. But there's a difference between me just, like, pulling my camera out and taking a picture. So, like, it may be a better photography camera now. It is not a better picture-taking experience now.
Another thing I'm missing these days, so now I walk around with a mask, right? And I go to the grocery store, and in order to unlock my iPhone, I can't use the face unlock anymore. I have to type my password. Meanwhile, Windows Phone had, you could set a timeout so that if you've used the phone within the last 15 minutes, then you don't have to do anything. You just flick and you're in. And I so miss that right now, walking around and trying to buy my groceries, because I keep my grocery list on my phone. Every time I put it in my pocket means another time I have to come and type my password to get it out again when I need to get the next thing.
Mm-hmm. And I'll give this credit to Sue. I desperately miss the battery life of my phones, especially like on my Lumia 1520. Like 1520, for most people will know this who are listening, but it was the first really big phone. It was like a 6.7 inch screen or something like that. It was huge. And it had a big fat bezel around it. It came in red and yellow and white. And you pull it out at like Starbucks and people go, holy crap, that's a really big phone. And then you'd have like your Starbucks barcode on a live tile and they could scan it and everybody's minds were blown. But like that was the kind of phone where I could use it heavily over the course of the day. And at the end of the day, it would still be at like 75%, 80%. Like I could go like 3 days without charging it. And I didn't have to worry about it. Like now, even on my Note 10 Plus, which again, like I got Microsoft Launcher on it. It's a really nice phone. Samsung did a really great job. But I still, like when I travel, I keep a battery brick in my back pocket. And I never did that with my Lumia 1520. Like I just knew that I could roll all day, even internationally, taking pictures of tourist sites, hang out at night. And I knew I would I never got below like 20% on that phone. And I think that's a huge testament to Sue and the work that her team did, and all the stories I'm hearing now about like the level of precision and the level of attention to detail that we did to squeeze every single minute of battery life out of those phones. It paid off. And at the time, it was definitely the best user experience.
Yeah, I feel like battery life is just something that we're all accepting, that it's really bad on cell phones now. And so everybody's buying those battery bricks. Like I have a friend that has 4 of them, and he just carries them around all the time. And I feel like that just shouldn't be a thing. Like we shouldn't accept that. We should demand that like battery life be better, especially with like how much we use our phones today. Right. And then not to mention, it's just like, we're just going out and buying all these battery bricks and we're just dealing with it. And it's like, I don't know. It just seems silly. Like I don't know why we're just accepting that.
I
It's
agree with
because
you.
people don't know.
Oh, please go ahead.
I just said people don't know it could be different because unless they use a Windows phone, that's what they've lived with.
That's right. I mean, I would say, like, as I'm an Eagle Scout, so I like to be prepared. So I always keep a battery brick in my bag. My bag is it's like a rolling workbench. I have tools and battery packs and cables and everything in it. Like, just makes me feel better to know that I have all that stuff. But I would prefer to just be prepared and not have to use it than be prepared and know that I'm going to have to use it every time I leave the house. So I think this is right. Like, if you lived that world, you're unhappy with your battery life right now. It's kind of like internet speed, right? If you never had broadband, you don't know that a 56K modem is slow. This is the best you got, right? And you're happy with it. But once you get a taste and you've got that broadband, and then you go back to dial-up, you're ready to blow your brains out. You can't handle it because it's the most frustrating thing in the world. And that's where I am with battery life for sure. It's my Lumia 1520 is the benchmark for basically every electronic device I've ever had since then, and none of them live up to that standard.
What's something that y'all wish that people knew about the Windows Phone that they might not know? I know we're talking about battery life, and that's kind of a big one. But is there anything that you can think of that you wish people knew?
I wish people knew how great the user experience was, because I think that a lot of people dismissed it without ever having a chance to try it. Simply because we could talk for hours about the app gap, and we could talk about some of the other problems that, breadth of hardware and some other things that kind of hindered our ability to really scale the product. But a lot of people, certainly at the time, because of the way the Microsoft brand was perceived at the time, the way our partnerships were with the mobile operators at the time, they just kind of blew it off, and they just went with what their friends had, right? You want to be on iMessage because your friends also had iPhones, so you just kind of bought one and you didn't really think about it. Because we know that the people who actually decided to take the leap were actually very, very happy. And I use an example of my dad as a story here. My dad does not like cell phones at all. He is still using a HTC 8X running Windows Phone 8.1 because he gets it. It works for him. It still has great battery life, which is a miracle after this long. But it still works, and it works great. And he has live dials set up to call me and to call my mom and to call the office and to call a couple of friends, and that's it. It's just a stack of wide tiles down his home screen. He doesn't use anything else. But he was deeply happy with it. And when I've tried to, at this point, say, maybe it's time to go to an Android phone, maybe it's time to take a look at mom's iPhone, he doesn't want to. He's like, no, I want this thing because I get how this works. This makes sense to me. And it breaks my heart that it's not available. So I've actually gone out and I purchased on eBay a bunch of old HTC new in box 8Xs for like $70 a piece. And I send them to him. So when they die, he can pop his SIM card back in and it's just going to work. He doesn't care that there are no software updates. He doesn't do anything with it. But he's deeply, deeply committed to the user experience.
Yeah, I agree that customization of the start menu to put tiles where you want, make them whatever size you want. Each of us, I think, inherently expects everyone else to want to do the same thing that we do. But the truth is there's actually a lot of variety in what users want to do. And some people want a few very large tiles that are easy and simple to deal with. Some people want many, many things so they can get to all their stuff as quickly as possible. And each of that deep personalization that we got on the start menu just doesn't exist in the phones of today. I can drag tiles into a grid on my iPhone, but I can't control how many things are in that grid and the spacing. Right. It's just a pain.
Mm-hmm. And especially when we moved to the newer UIs where you had wide tiles and squares and the small squares, and you could really get and groups, and you could really get granular about, these are the big things where I know I need a wide tile, my email, my calendar, because I need that breadth of information. Some of them I want to treat as just traditional app icons because I don't really need the live information. And it was just better. It was just more intuitive. Like, why wouldn't you give more home screen real estate to the stuff that matters to you? And why wouldn't you backburner the things that aren't important to you? And, again, like on my Android phone, like I can do some stuff with widgets and I have my app drawer, but everything still takes one or two more clicks or one or two more swipes to get what I want to, as opposed to my live tile screen, which was my start screen, which was just, it was all just right there. And now I'm feeling all wistful and nostalgic, and I'm kind of extra bummed that I don't get to have one in my pocket anymore.
I know this is actually hurting my heart too, to
Right.
not be
Like, I feel
able
like it's cathartic, and we should have a support group or something.
to. One of the things that, sorry, Misty. One of the things that I was thinking about in terms of I wish people understood was we actually switched OSs in the middle of engineering Windows Phone. And that was like a major engineering feat. I wish that we'd have been able to be a little more stable and spend more of our time on adding new value for users, but doing major OS changes year to year had it was actually quite an accomplishment by our team.
Mm-hmm.
We moved from Windows CE in the early Windows Phone 7 days to real Windows in the Windows Phone 8 timeframe, and then again to like even more of Windows in Windows 10 time. And that was quite a lot of engineering behind the scenes going on behind that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's cool. I had no idea about that, so I'm glad you talked about that. That's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Sue, do you want to show us some of the phones that you've got?
Sure. So I have a couple of Windows phones with me today. So as a member of the performance team, I felt it was my mission to always have the cheapest phones. So I was always buying the low-end ones. This one was my very first Windows phone. I think it was the 810 or 820. It only had 512 megs of RAM, and it was nice and small. If you compare that, this is my iPhone XS, which is kind of small for a phone. Like, this is so much smaller. It kills me these days how bad my pockets are, that these things destroy my pockets. This little phone was my favorite phone for a couple of years, and the performance on there was great. And then I have the 635, which was one of our low-end phones from running Windows 8 and Windows Phone 8. And you can see it's a fair bit slimmer, but it was also larger and really, really light. I wish I could show you how light it was. But the performance on this was also excellent. And really, I'm proud of both of these little phones for doing a great job. I did use the 1520 a little bit, that really huge one. It was, in comparison, you could probably fit 3 of these in the size that a 1520 was.
See, I was the opposite. I always liked the high-end phones, and I've got bigger hands, so having a bigger phone felt very natural to me. There were a couple, like the HTC Titan 2 I was a huge fan of. I think that one had at the time, it was a 12 megapixel camera on the back. This was like 2013. It was like best in class. And then, I went to the Lumia, the 1020, which had that 41 megapixel camera on the back, the hockey puck, that did like the multiple image layering. And I had this great demo photo that I shot in downtown Bellevue where I took a picture down 8th Street. And you could look at it and it looked like the street. And then when you double clicked it, it zoomed in like 3 blocks down the street on a car. And then if you double tapped and zoomed in again, you could actually read the license plate off the car. And I was like a quarter of a mile away. It was kind of amazing. And that's another one. Like Samsung comes out with the Galaxy S20 and they're like, we have a 108 megapixel camera. It's got this space zoom thing. And I'm like looking at my sad little like non-functional yellow Lumia 1020 that I did that with in 2013 or whenever. But yeah, the 1520 was definitely my favorite phone. That was one where when I first saw the prototypes from Nokia, I was like, you got to be kidding me. Nobody's going to use that thing. And then I got my demo unit, and I was like, this is the best thing I've ever had in my life. I'm never going to go to a small phone. I love that one. Then the one that I wish I had to show, and see, you probably have one of these somewhere, is the Windows Phone 7, the Samsung Taylor, the dev device. That was like the first one that we handed out. I love that thing. I used the charger for it for like 10 years.
Yeah, my kids still use this 635 whenever we go on road trips. It has no SIM card, and sorry, I tried to get it in my camera. We give it to them in the car, and they play games on it. It's still loaded up with games and movies and things, so lasts a long time in the car.
Mm-hmm.
One thing before we go, I wanted to ask: are y'all going to order the new what is it, the Duo? Are y'all going to order it or when it comes out?
As I'm highly tempted. I definitely have to say I have not seen it. In my heart, some part of me was hoping that it is built to have the old Windows Phone shell. I probably will be disappointed, but even still, yeah. I don't have any logical reason to move off my current phone, but I'm very tempted for sure.
Yeah, I've got to agree with Sue. I agree. I think you summed it up perfectly. Like, there's no reason for me to upgrade from the phone that I have right now. It's a great phone. I use it all the time. I'm very happy with it. I have it all Microsofted up. But the emotional attachment to having a phone designed and built by Microsoft again is probably going to be strong enough that, yeah, I'll probably pre-order one and get it on launch day. And I'm already excited. Did you see the picture that Panos put out? He's sitting on his deck with his Duo and his yellow pants, and it makes me very jealous, both for the pants and for the phone.
I will say this: I self-hosted some. I ran one of those, an earlier model of that hardware in the past when we were trying out software on it, and it was very slick hardware. It was definitely not the same hardware, but it was hardware I would be proud to carry for sure.
Yep.
My cell phone is really old. And as soon as I heard that we were going to do another phone, I was like, I got to make it through. It's literally in pieces on the back. So if I ever took my little case off, it would fall apart. I mean, it is literally in pieces. And I've just been making it work, and I've just been fighting through. And I'm like, when is that phone coming out again? Like, is it supposed to, I'm like trying to just hold on so I can get it, because I'm like, I just got to make it. I know a lot of times when cell phones come out for the first time, there's a few bugs and things like that. And, I'm usually one of those people that waits until like the next version. So all the first, gen bugs or whatever get worked out. No, I'm waiting desperately. But yeah, so I'm definitely going to get it as soon as I can.
Yeah, I'm excited.
If you need some hardware to borrow in the meantime, I can lend you some.
Thanks, that's awesome. Yeah, now I want to surf eBay and see if there's any old Windows phones on there.
If I can ever get back into the office, I have piles of them. But sadly, that's not an option right now. So whenever this whole pandemic thing passes, I think I even have a new Inbox 1520 somewhere stashed away in one of my crates. We'll get you something.
Yeah, I have about a dozen phones myself.
Wow, that's so awesome. Like, I'm like that with Microsoft keyboards. I have like almost half of a room now full of them, where I just buy them or someone gives them to me, or, it's like I've got so many Microsoft keyboards. And mice too. It's nuts. So phones would be a nice thing to have. I would appreciate that. Yeah, for sure. Less storage. All right. Well, thank y'all for joining us on RetroTech. This was really great. I've been looking forward to talking to y'all for a while now. And this is really exciting, especially with like the new phone coming out at some point pretty soon, hopefully, because we need it. And it's good to hear about this because, the things we talked about, like the camera and the battery life and the calendar and all this stuff are things that we kind of have to deal with today. And like, it's cool to think about better times, and hopefully, maybe we'll see some of the stuff that we saw in the Windows Phone, maybe at least something, in the Duo. That would be great. That'd be really awesome. But I'm sure if that ever happened, that'd be a super secret until it came out. So But thank you. Any parting words for y'all, like in memoriam of the Windows Phone?
I love Windows Phone.
Yeah.
You've got that right there on your t-shirt. I love that t-shirt and wore it till it died.
Yeah. I would say two things. Like, one is, and I always say this, but like, I gotta say thank you to the Windows Phone community, because that community still exists and that community is still really strong. And there are lots of people who are now, I would say, full-fledged members of the Microsoft family who put their foot in the water for the first time with Windows Phone, and they're still around. And there are lots of great friends I've made all over the world because of that. And regardless of where our product strategy goes, I hope that never goes away. The other thing I would say is that if you're really looking for a great Microsoft experience on a phone, and it's not hardware that we make, there are actually some pretty good options on Android right now. It breaks my heart to say that a little bit, but you can get a great Android phone. You can put Microsoft Launcher on it. You can add Outlook. You can add Office. You can add To Do. You can add Power BI. You can add Bing. You can add Edge. You can do all this stuff. And while it's not the same as Windows Phone, if you're in on the Microsoft world and in the Microsoft experience, you can still Microsoft up your phone pretty well, even if there's a different OS running underneath it.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. I appreciate it. This was great.
Thank you.